Hallmark Heartbeats, a podcast all about Hallmark movies. And today I am joined by Hallmark movie writer and book author, Tracy Andreen. I am a huge fan of your movies. I am such a huge fan of your movies. So when I got the email that said, do you want to interview Tracy Andreen? I was like, yes, yes.
Thank you. That's very
sweet. I say yes. Like, what language do you want? Yes, yes, yes. I am such a huge fan of yours, and it's hilarious because this is actually your first book.
It is.
And I didn't even know that was your first book because you are such a good movie writer. So, first of all, what do you find? What are some of the biggest differences do you find in writing like a movie script versus writing a book conceptually?
Being able to tell the whole story the way I want to tell it, and having it really just be my voice as opposed to sort of negotiating a myriad of different voices, whether it be in the writing process, the development process, the idea process, taking it all at the beginning, or even once you're in production and you hand over the script to people that, you know, most of the time you've just met, and you're like, well, I hope you get my voice, you know, and I hope that even if you don't get my voice and you don't want to do it my way, that at least it comes out halfway decent. And that's kind of a roll of the dice. Whereas with writing this book or writing novel form in general, it can really just be me. I mean, there's editing for sure. Definitely in the editing process, they're like coming in and saying, do you want to say it this way? Do you know you've said this word 5 times in the last 3 pages? I'm like, oh, sorry. You know, that could be. But by and large, the story that I wanted to tell is in that book. The my editor, Regina Hayes, who is a legend, and she came out of retirement to work on this book, which I'm so excited about. I can't even tell you. She's amazing. And she was really great through the process of being open to my ideas and also just guiding me in a way that it didn't feel like I was being guided, you know, but also having suggestions if something came up. There was really only 2 times in terms of the narration, the over plot wise, that there were a couple of things that kind of were hiccups, and she came in and said, I think if I don't do it this way, these are some of the things that may kind of questions readers may have. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I didn't actually see it that way. Let's find a way to kind of like course correct a little bit here and then course correct a little bit here. But overall, I mean, that book is about 89,000 words by the time you're done with it. And it's not a short book, but I would say I had fewer notes in the process of writing that book than I do in the course of writing a single screenplay for a network. Wow. So it's, yeah. So, but at the same time, to be fair to a network, they, or a producer or whomever it may be, they have a vision as well. And they've usually hired me to help kind of create something within the paradigm that they're looking for. So that's my job, is to kind of like help, you know, it's not like I'm not, you know, oh God, I just blanked on Reservoir Dogs. I just blanked on Reservoir. Who's the famous director? I just blanked. I'm not a famous director or writer who can come up with their own. I'm going to be really embarrassed when I remember this in about 10 seconds. Story and produce it on my own and raise my own money and all this other stuff. I have to kind of work with the people who've hired me, and that's my job, and as a screenwriter, to do it.
That's where like the book is like your monopoly sort of thing. It's like,
yeah, it's definitely my voice. It's definitely my voice.
Whereas like, the movie, it's like a group thought process.
Yeah, it is a group thought process. And there have been instances, you know, whether I'm called in to rewrite or develop a project with someone else, like, you know, co-write with someone, or come up with something on my, you know, my own idea, that kind of thing. So there's even still with working with producers, you're still sort of you're kind of managing other people's ideas and input. So, you know, that's why sometimes when a script comes out, and I'm very frequently seeing it the day that the movie is released, the same time as the viewers, like sometimes you just go in and you're like, man, I hope that worked, you know, like, and sometimes you're like, yeah, that worked great. And sometimes you're like, oh,
That did not come out the way I wanted.
that is not even remotely close to what I was thinking. Like, I really wish he would have called me on that. But, you know, and so you know, the good news is I feel pretty lucky in that I've had more projects come through close to what I was imagining it than not. And I'm lucky that way. I'm fortunate. Yeah.
I'm a book reader and I also love movies, but a lot of times when I get very disappointed when the movie comes out and it's so different from the book, because a lot of times you create the movie in your head
in your head
while you're reading.
Yeah.
What you're seeing on screen or on movie screen or TV or whatever is nothing like what's going on in your head. And even though, and also sometimes you think to yourself, my movie is better.
No, and it's true. I've been hired to do adaptations of other people's books. I think 4 times, possibly 5. I'm not sure. And every time I try to approach it with initially, like my first draft tries to hew as close to the book as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that the final product has ever been really close to the book. I've had sometimes where I said to the producers or at some point, I'm like, well, then what do you like about, this particular book that you want to keep? And they're like, well, really like the overall concept and the title. I'm like, okay, like, what do you want me to do with that? Like, okay. So, but there's others that actually I've managed to, like, I hope. I always get a little nervous with the, when an adaptation.
Do you ever actually contact the actual author of the book that you're adapting and be like, so how did I do?
I've never asked that question. But I have had converse, sort of like the one author with whom I've had direct conversation was Nancy Nagel from Christmas Joy. And she was at, I think, one of the last Hallmark TCAs in the before times. We were able to see each other face to face, and she's just a lovely human, and we had a really just a great conversation. And it's helpful that she understands, because she's done I believe she's done adaptations at this point, but when you take a book, her Christmas Joy had a lot of stuff going on in it. Like there was a and we had to basically be like, okay, what are the things that we can take out of this that keeps it I guess
that's with Matt Long, right?
Yes, Matt Long and Danielle Panabaker.
Yes,
and
I
love
Matt Long. I know Matt Long from Manifest.
Yeah, hilarious.
And he was on Private Practice too. That was the first movie that was the first show that I saw him on, was Private Practice. He was in the last season of Private Practice.
Oh, my first experience with him as an actor was seeing him in Christmas Joy. And then this spring, I got really into Manifest. And I was like, oh, wait, Matt,
I know him.
Yeah. And I thought, he was super cute and, charming and lovely. And
I love him.
There's another one.
I love him in Manifest. I love him.
He's really good. I mean, I don't spoil it. I'm only on season 3. But I had to pause because I was just, happily working a lot, but I had a break where I'm like, I'm going to get in a few things here while I can. And then it's back to the old drawing board. So that was fun.
Well, oh my goodness, we are totally going off the rails.
That's welcome to my world.
Well, I do have to, let's talk about the book, because the book is, so this is Christmas. Okay. What inspired you to write this book? Okay, first of all, you say you're from Oklahoma. This is set in Oklahoma. So Christmas, Oklahoma. Is there a Christmas, Oklahoma, or a town in Oklahoma that's even similar to this? So this came out of your head.
That just came out of my head. So the backstory for how the book came about. was some of the amazing people at Penguin Random House approached me back when I was in Hawaii. Actually, when I was in Oahu, I got an email. I was visiting my sister-in-law. She was shooting a TV series there. And I got an email that basically was like, Penguin Random House approached me about trying to do, initially it was like, they wanted to know if I wanted to do a picture book or if I wanted to do a young adult novel. And I was like, I gave them some ideas for, once I calmed down, because I was so incredibly excited about like, what, Penguin Random House, the biggest publisher on the planet. It just was like, hey, you want to write a book? And I'm like, yeah.
You
don't want $1 million? Yeah.
I said, like, yeah.
Thumbs up to that.
This is like getting called by George Clooney. Hey, do you want to write a script for me?
Like, sure. Okay. And so they originally was like, hey, do you want to do a picture book or do you want to do a young adult novel? And I gave them some ideas for picture books, which didn't work out. It's really not my strength. But other than reading them to my little nieces and nephews along growing up. And then the other one were some young adult novels, which they did like those ideas. And so one of those ideas that I pitched was, So This Is Christmas. And it wasn't, and when I initially pitched it, it was just, hey, girl, Finley returns home from school to small town and these things happen. But it wasn't initially set in Christmas, Oklahoma. It wasn't until like after they said yes and we started going forward with it, that I kind of had this moment where I think I was doing dishes. And then suddenly I was like, what if the town's named Christmas? Like just had this moment, like, so this is Christmas. What does that mean? You start having your brain sort of doing popcorn ideas around here. And then it was like, yeah, this. And then as soon as I thought that, it was like this avalanche of ideas. I'm like, yep, there we go. That's where we're going. And then it just kind of unfolded.
So many of my friends have asked me, what is this book about? And I said to them, it's about this girl who goes to a boarding school and she like hacks onto her website, her town's website, adds these Hallmark movie pictures. That's what I described it as, Hallmark movie pictures on the website. And she shows off to her classmates, this town. This one guy thinks that that's her hometown. And so like when she goes home for Christmas, he follows her and he pretty much like blackmails her into like, hey, look, you told me this is what to expect. So now you gotta,
deliver.
And so this is how that's how the whole movie and stuff. But like that pretty much describes the prologue in chapter 1.
That's exactly right. And everything after that is like, and then the rest of the story starts.
Like, because I mean, like to say anymore, it's just crazy.
Well,
I mean,
I
love Finley. I love Arthur. I love all of the characters that you've created in this small town. My question is like, when we were talking earlier before the recording, you were talking about like pulling from other people's stories to, inspire you for movies or whatever. So were there other people's stories that kind of inspired you to add into this book as well? Were some of the characters based on somebody you knew or you met or something?
Yes. So the some were and some weren't. The story kind of the Finley's mom, Dana, is very much like my mom's story, except not with my dad. My mom got pregnant at 16 and had a baby at 17, which is my oldest brother. And this is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in the mid 19th, or not mid, but the 1900s. Wait, what am I saying? Edit that out. My mom's gonna kill me. Whatever it was, way back when. So she and my mom was just a really smart woman. She was just, she still is. She's very much alive. In fact, I just saw her yesterday. She came into town to visit. But I always wondered what mom could have been if she hadn't got pregnant at 16 and hadn't had a baby in Oklahoma and, kind of had a different, because she was also really, really smart, and she skipped a grade. And so she is a little with Finley on that as well. So mom was, I think she skipped third grade, which is why she always says her penmanship is terrible. So, so she was just incredibly smart, had a lot, she's very funny, has a lot of potential, great sense of humor. And then, I'm really glad that her life turned out the way it is, just selfishly because I exist. She ultimately met my dad, and they got married and had my other two brothers and I, and we were raised in Tulsa. So that's great. But your brain always kind of goes, oops, did I hit the die? We're still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Your brain always kind of, swirls around with like ideas, like what would it be like? So my mom has a big influence on this story. And also just, I grew up loving, I love British movies in that sort of dorky way. I love British authors. I've had friends actually tell me, you've got to stop doing an English accent. I'm not stopped now, but when I was younger, I used to be just obnoxious about it. And so one of the things I knew early on is I knew Arthur was going to be British. It's instantly, I knew he was going to be British. And I just felt it's just easier with Finley to kind of keep Finley close to who I am, in the sense of like what she was like growing up, just to make it, since it really was my first published novel. I've written novels that were unpublished. That was actually my major in college, was being an author, to try to be an author. And then I moved out here to Los Angeles to pursue screenwriting. And in that regard, area, I'm self-taught. So I never got a formal education in screenplay writing, but I did in novels and in fiction and that kind of storytelling type.
I never thought that I didn't know that there were like classes for novel writing.
I was a professional writing major. So is what my actual major, but like all of the classes I took pretty much were for novels and short stories and narrative and that kind of storytelling. Wow. So I was pretty fortunate when they came and approached me like, hey, do you want to do this? I was like, actually, I'm here. So
this is what I've been wanting to do all my life.
Kind of. Yeah, actually. That's why I was sort of like, what happened? So.
Well, I want to talk to you about Grandma Joe and Aunt Esha without telling too much.
Yeah, I have to be really careful about, because there's lots of twists. We want to make sure that we keep all the twists.
Well, twisty. I do want to know what made you want to write that storyline, include that storyline.
I don't know if I can tell you that without like revealing too much. That's the thing. Is like, I'll tell you that what the idea was for Grandma Joe, for Dana, who is Finley's mom, and for Finley herself, the three
generations of women.
Yeah, 3 iterations of them these are 3 women at 3 different generations, that all 3 of them didn't get it right the first time. They messed up the first time. And all 3 of them have told themselves stories. And all 3 of them have had to kind of come about to their own sense of self-honesty and then act upon it. And so that's, so to have those 3, because Dana messed up too. Dana, had this idea, and she, so Dana has her sort of story that she has to kind of own. Grandma Joe has her story and the sort of self-duplicity that she has to navigate.
I look at it more like her journey to finding herself. Like,
see, the thing is, I think she kind of known herself. She just
couldn't
admit it.
Yeah,
and she couldn't act, and that's the thing, is she couldn't act on it. And that was why it was really important at the end, where she does what she does.
Yeah.
After Finley comes and does her heroic, that, and I really love that about Finley, is that Finley's big climactic moment isn't really about going
herself.
to Arthur. Yeah, and it isn't about herself. It isn't about her going to Arthur and declaring anything. It's about acting for somebody else and helping that person and sort of that, again, without trying to give too much away. It's really hard. It's kind of tricky to talk about, without.
I hate that. I hate it when like you can't talk about stuff, but you really
I know.
want to.
I hope you. I'm so sorry because I know it's like a juicy bit to discuss. But I want to make sure that like most.
I know you guys need to read the book. No, we can't talk we can't say anything more than that. But
right. But
I do have to say I like skip forward a little bit while I was still in like the first half of the book. I skipped forward a little bit, and then I read a certain paragraph, and I was like, "Ooh!"
Well, I've done that. Where you're especially if you're preparing for an interview, so you're like, I got to read this. This is not a short book. Oh wait, I need to know how did that get there? I've done it.
You've written so many Christmas movies and now Christmas book. What is your ideal Christmas thing? Like, if you could have your perfect Christmas moment, for yourself, what would it be?
That is an excellent question. I've never been asked that. I would love to have. First of all, I need to get a big house. I'm working on that. I would like to have a big house with a big fireplace and a lovely Christmas tree, and honestly, just kind of all the stuff that you imagine with the warm Christmas lights and my family around me. And I'd love to have a football in the background. I'm a big football fan. And so
what's your team?
Sadly, I chose early in my youth, and I chose based on like I was 5 years old, and I chose because I was like, dolphins are adorable. And so I chose the Miami Dolphins, and it's been an absolute journey in pain for the last many years of pain. And this year was actually it's really disappointing that I still don't think Tua is the reason, but that's another story. It was like, we got a lot of problems on the Dolphins and Tua isn't it. But, and also the Oklahoma Sooners, which is not a professional team. They just feel that way sometimes. So anyway, but yeah, that kind of warm, everyone has food, we're all together, kind of Christmas experience. I like doing that. And then hiring someone to clean everything up. That's big for me.
That's what my mom hates about like hosting Christmas parties. It's just like, I hate the cleanup. Like
everyone, that's
they're fun and all, but if somebody else could do the cleanup, that would be great.
Yes, exactly right. Someone just come in and take all the trash. Oh, did elves come and take the trash? Oh, did elves clean up all the turkey or whatever?
I know. It gets my parents get to the point where like they don't even enjoy opening Christmas presents anymore because you got all the Christmas wrapping paper and stuff, and we have like 3 plastic bags.
Right. Yeah. I think when I was young, my mom and dad got to this point where they would have these enormous red and green garbage bags with all of our wrapped presents in them. And at first we thought it was, just separate. One was with Michael's name, one was with Rick's name, one was with my name, and one was with Keith's name, and like bows around it. And so we'd run out and open them up and get our presents out. I think it was many years later, I realized, oh, wait, that was really just sort of them, having the garbage bags on hand so we could then just like pop it back. And I was like,
efficiency.
I was like, you guys are just being efficient,
I know. Oh my goodness.
Let me say one thing. I would also like, for another Christmas idea, just on the opposite end, I would love to go explore the Christmas markets in like Germany or somewhere in Europe. I would love to have like that experience just once, or Ireland, kind of the European Christmas experience just once.
What you've written several movies. We just talked about one of my personal favorites is Snow Bride, which I only found out when I was reading your like acknowledgments or whatever. It was like your first movie you wrote for Hallmark, or was it?
It was. It was. It was the first movie I've had full length movie I'd had produced.
I love
and it came about. It's still, that's probably of all the movies that I've written, the closest to being sort of authentic to my voice. And I don't want it to be like about like just in the sense that I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what Hallmark wanted. I just wrote what I wanted to write. And then the director, the late Bert Kish, who is was a wonderful man and a fantastic director. And he just took hold of the script and made it, and rhythm wise, he has a great ear for how old, not just because we would talk about how we loved the old school Hollywood movies, you know, the screwball, Preston Sturges, Howard Hawks, that kind of, you know, era of rapid fire dialogue. And so you can really feel it in terms of the pacing and the approach to Snow Bride.
And the comedy.
And we were allowed to have comedy back then, like real genuine comedy. Like,
yeah, I one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Katrina, your sister-in-law, tumbles down.
Yeah.
Yep. In the big poofy Christmas dress that looks like, no offense to 80s Christmas dress, and people love Princess Diana's Christmas wedding.
Oh yeah, it was massive.
But it was very like Princess Diana-ish.
Oh yeah.
Wedding dress with the
that
big
dress was
poofy sleeves and.
I think there's a line in there where she looks at the dress and she's like, "Man, you must love him." And like, it's just like, woof. You're gonna wear this one, okay? so
I'm sorry, but like 80s dresses should just stay in the 80s. I feel like 80s wedding dresses should stay in the 80s.
Oh yeah, agreed. I could not agree more. That was a lot. One of my other sisters-in-law got married to my brother in the 80s, and I was one of the bridesmaids, and I was wearing these big. It was royal blue, which looks great with my incredibly white skin. Big poofy sleeves. And then we had hoop skirts. I mean, it was just like, it was this whole thing. And my two oldest nephews, who were at the time, they were very young. So they were just very honest. And they saw the picture of me in the bridal. They were like, when they realized it was me, they just started laughing hysterically and rolling around. I'm like, all right, you know, cut it out, kids. You know, like, stop that. But it was full 80s, like the hair, the dress, everything. But let me tell you a story about that dress scene in Snow Bride. So when I was originally approached about writing what would ultimately become Snow Bride, it was Tim Johnson was the producer of it, and he and Lee Friedlander, who was another, had been, you know, talking with each other. And Lee was originally scheduled to direct it, but it didn't end up happening. But she stayed on and produced it because she'd been working on it, you know, from the very beginning. She actually just called me in 2012 and was like, "Hey, can you write a Hallmark Christmas movie?" And I was like, "Sure." I mean, I hadn't seen a single one of them, you know, but I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course I can." And so I, you know, did power, like watching as many of it. And there were very few back then. Let me just say this, there were very few Christmas movies. It's not like it is now. And so I was watching as many as I could and kind of came up with the idea. We pitched it. And originally what Tim wanted was, he came to us with a title, A Bride for Christmas. And we came up with the pitch and we gave it to him. And he came back and he was like, "Great," you know, and I ultimately ended up writing it around like a few months later. And I'm about 60% done with this. And he calls up and he's like, "Look, here's the deal. I don't want her to be a bride." I'm like, "I'm sorry?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't want her to be a bride. And I'm not sure I want it to be set at Christmas." And we were like, "We're like, more than halfway. What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, so here's what we're getting." So he basically was like, I don't want her to be a bride. He's like, "So, you know, kind of like figure something out." I'm like, you know, hey, this is my first experience of like, all right, let's work on this on the fly. So we got him to still keep it Christmas. right? But
Yeah.
we had to take, she was no longer going to be a bride, a runaway bride sort of situation. So we took that element out of it. She was always the reporter, and and he was always going to be the Kennedy-esque
So
guy.
it's sort of like the original script was sort of like the runaway bride from Julia Roberts.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that. Like we had some other stuff, but that all got scrapped. Like the first act and the first half of the movie basically just got scrapped. And I was like, okay, let's figure out how to do this. But the one thing is, I had already written her in a bridal dress on a mountain tumbling down thing. And I thought it was hilarious. Okay.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, all right, so she's not going to be a bride. We did keep Christmas. How do I keep that scene in this movie? Because I don't want to change that scene. Like she's in the bridal dress, she tumbles down this snowy.
Just a whole vision in your head.
It was, and I was like, it was a vision in my head, and I was like, and it's gonna happen. I don't know. This may be my one and only Hallmark movie or a movie at all, but I want that scene in this movie. And so, and I was all, and then he, at the end of it, and then he comes in and picks her up and carries her off in a bridal dress. And I was like, I want this to happen somehow. So I literally, spent like a week figuring out like, how do I work it around this one little scene, which is ridiculous. Now, I don't think I would necessarily do that now, but I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it was hilarious how it happened. Because she came from like yoga or running or something. She had shorts on, and the only thing that in her car broke down, and the only thing that she had in her trunk was the big running gown.
That's all she could wear. I mean, it probably wouldn't happen now because it's physical comedy.
Yeah.
They're not, it doesn't always work out well. They've had, Hallmark hasn't had some not great experiences with physical, which I understand. But I thought that Bert and really managed to stage that, and Katrina and the stunt woman who did the tumbling toward Katrina. I thought they did a good job. So
Katrina is such a great actress.
She's
done all of your movies. And I love, oh my God, like every single movie that I've seen her in, I love them. And it's just like, she's awesome. And
she's funny.
She is. She's so hilarious. And another one of my favorites, God, I could listen pretty much every single Christmas with the Darlings. I actually did recent review on just a couple of months ago, because I did a diversity themed podcast, and I was like, well, Katrina is Asian American.
She's half Taiwanese.
Yeah, half Taiwanese. And then and also you had a lesbian couple in the movie. I was like, I want to do this. This is it. This is my movie. I want to do this and stuff. But I loved this. I love you. I love you.
What's really great about the with Christmas with the Darlings is that was just
Alexis is awesome. I love him. I watched.
Oh, I thought Carlos was great. I thought he did a great job in that. I thought he was really.
I'm a huge Chesapeake Shores fan, and like, he's my dream husband. I don't know if he's like that in real life, but like David is definitely my dream husband.
Yeah, well, I will tell you this much. I know, like, I've stumbled on, when they first told me that he was going to be acting opposite Katrina in the movie, I kind of like, because I'm curious, I was like, who is he? I mean, I knew I'd seen him in Moonlight in Vermont, and I thought he was really good. But then I found out he actually has the same birthday as my brother, as Katrina's husband. And I was like, I called her, I was like, this is going to work out fine. Like he's literally his Keith's birthday. You guys are going to be okay.
Like perfection right there.
Exactly. They're both Virgos. It'll be okay.
That's too funny. But no, I love that movie too. The kids are so cute. And I grew up in foster care. So in a way, I sort of understood that sense of like family law and then like, not moving a lot and not moving in, with family and stuff. And it was just like another one of my favorite Christmas movies. But of all of the movies you've written, which one do you say is your favorite?
Always Snow Bride. Always.
Always what?
Always Snow Bride.
It's always. The first is always special.
It is. I mean, but this was also, it was really special in that Katrina was, the star. This was the first, Lee and I basically, well, it was a weird, I think I've told this story before. So if I have, and you've heard it, I apologize. But so when we first came up, when we were working on this and we wrote this, Lee obviously had known Katrina. So, but then when Lee and I were meeting with Michael Vickerman, who was the producer, and Bert Kish, who was going to be the new director, and it was the four of us meeting for the first time. It's like, I'm talking with Michael Vickerman, Lee's talking with Bert, and I decide in the middle of this conversation, I'm just going to pitch my sister-in-law. Like, she was coming off Spartacus. I'm just going to give it a shot. Probably going to get shot down on this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I start pitching Katrina as the lead. I was like, I know she's funny. Like, I'm around her. Like, I know it doesn't show through on Spartacus exactly, but I promise you she's funny.
Well, Spartacus is not exactly comedy.
Not a comedy. Not a comedy at all. And so meanwhile, I'm pitching her to Vickerman here. Right here is Bert Kish talking to Lee, and I hear him say Katrina Law. And I turned to him, and I think he's overheard my conversation. And I was like, right, she's great. He goes, oh, do you know her? And I'm like, wait, what? And he goes, oh yeah, I'm shooting an independent film with her right now in Death Valley. He's like, she's hilarious. I want to have her be the lead on this movie. And I'm like, Lee and I looked at each other and we went, what? And that's when the four of us decided, because Vickerman had known Katrina because he loved Spartacus. So like the four of us at that point were just like, she's got to be the lead. This is too kismety. Like, this has to happen, And it was really just kind of convincing Tim Johnson, the producer, and then the network, no, we promise she can do this. Yeah. And then she came in, and I think she just knocked it out of the park.
Definitely. Fate.
Yeah. So I always love that.
I love her. So can you call her up and be like, hey, a podcaster who's a huge fan and would love a chance to talk with you. I'm begging you to let me talk to you.
Absolutely. She's a little busy at doing NCIS right now, but I'll tell her, I'll be like,
wait, which NCIS is she in? Because there's also one here in Hawaii. So I'm like, if she's here in Hawaii, hello, hi, come on over.
She's on the original NCIS, the one that's now on season 19.
And she could come to Hawaii. So
she shot Hawaii 5-0 for a season. So that was the.
Well, just call her up and be like, hey, look, there's a podcaster. She's a huge fan of yours. Huge
I will tell
her, and like to get a chance. But the thing about it is, she. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of Asian representation. So I get really excited when there's any kind of Asian people on TV, because I'm like, yay!
I understand. Yeah, no, and it's really gotten better. I mean, it ain't great, but it's gotten a tick better in the last 2-3 years. I think enough people are kind of sounding have sounded and are continuing to sound the, hey guys,
I during my diversity podcast where I reviewed Christmas with Darlings, I was talking about how Katrina is, I hope I don't offend you or her, but is a white passing Asian, and she played pretty much white characters for Hallmark all this time, and erasing that Asian, you get what I'm saying, identity of hers. I do. And Christmas with the Darlings was really the first time that I've seen it slightly embraced, when she greeted the businessman in Mandarin, I think. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do. So I would love, and I know she would love to embrace her Taiwanese side more, or the Asian side more, if more overtly. If we're so lucky as to do another one, I would love to have that. And I named the character's last name was Liu. Yep. But I will say that, how do I put this? We were in the middle. Hallmark was in the middle of a transition at that point. So
Yeah.
as one who has written or had written during the previous iteration, and what we're kind of dealing with Hallmark now, it's kind of going through this transformation. And right when I was working on what would become Christmas with the Darlings was smack in the middle of what all the sort of tumult of the change was. And
Yeah.
as a writer who would really like to embrace, more diversity, I wasn't sure what I could and couldn't do. What I will say is Hallmark absolutely embraced on this script, Christmas with the Darlings, all levels of a diversity that we sort of proposed. Like most of the ones I was like kind of almost testing, like, can I do this?
Yeah.
What
can I do? What can't I do? Yeah.
What can I do? Yeah. And with with her being Jessica Liu, and speaking Mandarin to Mr. Lee. And I was definitely wanting to embrace I think he's Taiwanese. I'm
Yes, he was.
12 books. I was like, 12 screenplays since then, I feel like. Yeah, he's Taiwanese. It was like trying to bring a little more of the Asian element in the Taiwanese or just even Asian at all into it. And I'm really excited that like Hallmark has been open to embracing that. Like I've got Boyfriends of Christmas Past on my DVR right now, and it's Korean, and I'm super excited to watch that. First of all, it just sounds like an adorable premise. I know it's like the sort of a
Christmas
play
Carol. Yeah.
Christmas Carol, which itself, has inspired so many stories. And but it's hold on a second. My cat just woke up and I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen now? So I'm really excited to see that. I was excited that they were kind of embracing the Korean roots. And for Katrina, I mean, I'm not going to speak too much for her, but she's absolutely full on embraces the fact that she's half Taiwanese, and my niece is being raised in speaking fluent Mandarin at this point. Yeah. So she's to the point that she can switch, Kinley can switch between Mandarin, English, and Spanish, and we're just
wow.
You can just take over the world,
This week's movies, like Boyfriends of Christmas Past, talked about foster care. Mm-hmm. One of the boyfriends was a social worker who worked for an agency, was throwing a Christmas party for foster kids. And I was like, oh, I remember when I was in foster care, our agency did that too. At my very first Christmas party, I sang White Christmas. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. And another movie with Christmas in My Heart was about this guy who was raising his biracial child, and she was dealing with racial discussions that he really can't answer because he's white and she's really Black or that kind of thing. And I was like, I could understand that too, because I'm Asian.
Luke McFarlane, right?
Yeah, I love that movie.
I like him a lot. That's one I wanted to watch too. I it's on the
I cried.
Oh.
I boo-hooed, and I was just like, this is so beautiful. And I messaged him, and he replied to me. I was like, oh, he replied to me. But I messaged him, and I was like, this is your best movie I've seen you do. Like, this is literally the best movie that I've seen.
I can't wait to watch it,
Anyway, talk about this year's Christmas movies before we end.
Okay.
We have 3 movies coming up.
I have 3. So the first one airs on November 5th, and it's called, speaking of diversity, it's called Gingerbread Miracle, which is not the diversity part of it. It's that it's set in a panaderia. I have terrible pronunciation for any words that are not English. I embrace that about myself, or accept that about myself. But it's a Mexican bakery. And it's, in a lot of ways, it's a very much a traditional Hallmark Christmas movie, very much a traditional old school Hallmark Christmas movie. It's set in a bakery. It's 2 old friends from high school who haven't seen each other in a very long time. In this case, they're working together they sell his uncle's bakery. Maya, played by Merritt Patterson, she's come back in town about 2 years ago after a divorce, and is kind of to she thought it was only going to be for 6 months. And then she like was staying above her parents', garage to just hang out for just get at things. And the next thing she knows, she's like 2 years later and she's like, it's taking a little longer than I thought it was going to take, and so she's trying to like, be the success that she thinks she's supposed to be. And it ends up, she's an attorney, she's a contracts attorney, and ends up kind of working with the uncle to sell the bakery where she used to work as a teenager with Alejandro, or Alex, played by John Ecker. And he is in New York becoming the successful attorney, and he comes back when he hears this is the last time the Panaderia is going to be, Casillas Panaderia is going to be around. And so they end up, they end up working together. And there's a thing there's two things about it that are super fun, besides the fact that Merritt Patterson and John Ecker are like two of the prettiest people on the planet and they're falling in love. And I think that is just awesome. But there's like in the middle of it, we have the Christmas games. And I actually worked really hard to come up with like this. And I honestly don't know if it's fully realized I'll know when I see the movie. So but this kind of original Christmas game, it's a little like the Christmas in the Christmas pudding race, where people have like a Christmas pudding and they run with it. And then they go through obstacle courses. So that's kind of what's happening in the middle of it. And then you have at the end, you have a posada, which is the traditional Mexican nativity story of the night of when Mary and Joseph are looking for someone to give them room at the end. So that's happening November 5th. And then I have another one on November 21st, which I'm really excited about. That's the one with James Denton and Terry Hatcher. And that's a rewrite as well, where Mark Amato had written the first version of it, and then Hallmark and kind of really set up the world, or he set up the foundation of the story, and then I came in and got to play around with it, is how I like to say it. And that's kind of more of It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Destiny, sliding doors ish kind of story. And honestly, I'm just delighted about looking forward.
That's the Kiss Before Christmas?
Yes, right. It's a Kiss Before Christmas. And James Denton.
I'm excited because it's Desperate Housewives.
The Desperate Housewives reunion. James Denton and Terry Hatcher were both really excited. They're friends in real life. So they were really excited to work together again for the first time in a long time.
I know.
And I haven't seen it, but I just had a long conversation with the producer, John Eskenis, this weekend. And they just locked a picture on it. And he was just talking about how he's like, this is going to be a good one. He's like, I'm really excited about this. And he was the producer on Good Witch for many, I think through the whole thing. So he's like, for any of the Good Witch fans out there, I think they'll be happy to.
And Desperate Housewives.
And Desperate Housewives fans, Desperate Housewives fans who just like Christmas movies. I think that'll be a good one. And the third one on December 4th is A Very Merry Bridesmaid, which was not the title that it went through production as. It was Christmas Bridesmaid. I did not come with that title. And then that's with Emily Osment and oh my God, I literally can see the guy's face, but he's from In the Dark on the CW. And I have Chadwick Boseman. This happens to me all the time. A name that has nothing to do with this will pop in and I'm like, well, not getting around that name anytime soon. It's just like the earlier one with, I'm like, well, we'll get to the end of that later. Anyway, so that's on December 4th. That was an original idea with a friend of mine, Elena Valdez. And she kind of came up with this idea of, wouldn't it be fun to do 16 candles as an adult? And it's kind of set around, instead of your 16th birthday, it's your 30th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And so, it's just all these things where his character ends up making her feel seen in this movie. I don't know if that's much of a pitch, but I think we'll see. The script was really fun to write and it was really adorable, and it's a lot of family, and it's a pretty traditional Christmas. There's some moments of diversity in it too.
I just can't wait to see all of this, because like I told you, I'm a huge fan of your Christmas movies. And like,
thank you.
I could talk all day about the
Christmas movies. I'm chattering away.
Anyway, so this is Christmas. Go watch it and go read it.
Read it.
So,
It's actually not a movie.
I am excited. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you.
Thank
I had
you.
so much fun today. And
Thank you.
I
had a
wish
lovely time too.
I want to see more Christmas movies and hope. I want to know if there's a sequel. Do you want to write a sequel of this?
So
So this is Christmas.
I'm writing it right now. It's called So This Is Love.
Oh, so it will be Valentine's Day.
Yep.
With
Valentine's Day.
Finley
And it said,
will it be Finley and Arthur
Finley
centered,
and
or will it be
Arthur
another
at
person
Barrington
centered?
Academy.
Huh?
Finley and Arthur at Barrington Academy.
Ooh.
And it takes place over the 6 weeks right after they return to their school to kind of to see. I mean, things happen. The road
This
to
is, you know what is so weird is that it's my first young adult romance novel, which
really?
it just feels to me like weird to say young adult because in high school I never dated.
Really?
So, like, I wasn't allowed to date. I had like crushes.
Fair.
I had like guys, that I crushed on and went on to prom with, and they have kissed. But my parents were like, "No, you're not allowed to date."
Yeah. No, I get that. But you're in high school. Your hormones and heart are just racing all over the place, and crushes are, like you said, crushes are flying all over the place. But with Finley and Arthur, we'll see. Like the road to love is not always smooth. Let's just put it that way.
That is true. Well, I'm excited to. I want to know if Aisha finds love with Barrington. I'm excited for her.
I loved Aisha. Aisha was great. I had so much
fun. Is such sass. She reminds me of me. That like a lot of her reactions to Finley would be my reactions. So
yeah,
like leave me alone.
Huh?
Deal with. She's like when I read her, I'm like, leave me alone. I do not. Like, just don't bother me.
No. Aisha's just direct. She says everything that you're like, what is wrong with you? That's right through it. Like, and I love that about her.
And she's I love how quickly she becomes friends with Arthur, and Finley is like, wait, you texted him? I'm like, Finley girl, if you didn't know all this time that you did not have a crush on this dude, your reaction is telling everybody you had a crush on this dude.
Finley has a lot of learning but when you're 16 and newly 16 of that, life is a journey to self-understanding.
Yeah,
long time.
Yeah, like I just love the characters because in my head they're all doing the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for letting me talk to you. I'll see you soon. Hopefully, next time you have another book, you can come back.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I would love it. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.